Hello and welcome to the AFL High Performance Podcast. My name is Jack McLean. I'll be host today. I'm running a solo session discussing ultimately a year-round athletic development program, how to break it up from a strength and conditioning point of view. So if you're a coach tuning in, you'll get a bit of a deeper understanding of how I program and how I look at things from a force and velocity point of view, and how we want to influence those qualities to maximize game day performance. So it always works back from the position and the demands of the game. But ultimately, how do we, over a year, transitioning right now from off season to pre-season to ultimately in the future in season, how do we maximize those qualities to allow the athlete to put their strengths on show game day on a consistent basis over the upcoming season. So if you're an athlete tuning in, there will no doubt be some takeaways here, but this is more for the S&C coaches, sports scientists interested in programming. And it's not quite an annual periodized plan going to a granular. I've done a podcast on that. This is more just big picture, looking at why we program the way that we do, and a way that we can sort of profile our athletes to manage a large group, but also individualize our training to ensure that we're getting the stimulus that the athlete needs. Bit of an update from a professional point of view. Now the podcast is in a new location. I've moved to Western Sydney due to a change in work. So I've moved from the Melbourne Demons in the AFL to in the NRL. So a bit of a contrast there. Obviously, Melbourne's all AFL, and Western Sydney is rugby through and through. So looking forward to the change, looking forward to the challenge of learning a new sport. It's not a sport that I play personally, so it'll be a bit of a different insight. I've been speaking to a few professionals, and typically when we are learning a sport, it's from the perspective of when we play it as a kid. So from your own perception of playing your role within the game, and that's where your perception has sort of evolved from. And your connection to the game is from, developed as it usually in our youth and then evolved from into adulthood. It's quite a different experience learning and analyzing a game with a professional sort of perspective, breaking it down into learning the demands of the game, the different roles, the tactical understanding of the game, and ultimately, in my role, which will be maximizing their speed development, both acceleration, agility, and max velocity, but also looking after the return to play. So athletes that are injured, putting a program in place to get them back to playing. You've got to have a really clear understanding of the demands of the different roles, whether it be if they're in a forward or if they're a back. So it's been quite a stimulating experience learning a new sport with the adult cap on, and also with the strength and conditioning sort of education background, and analyzing it that way, opposed to when we typically learn it, which is through learning the game to play it yourself. So if you haven't done it before, I'll definitely present on it in the future about my experience in changing codes and the big takeaways and big learning. But if you haven't done it before, I definitely encourage you. It's been one of the biggest probably takeaways from this podcast. If you're a listener, no doubt it's something you've noted down from our more experienced coaches in high performance, how important it is to not just stay in one sport in your early to middle part of your career. So whenever you get the opportunity to explore different sports, to go for it. And it's definitely been on my radar the last couple of years, through largely through the podcast. So for sure, if you asked me, 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, I was pretty narrow focused on AFL and specializing in that sport. But I've soon realized through interviewing people on the podcast and people that I highly respect, that if you just stay in one sport, you're not going to grow as much and stretch your thinking compared to when you're needing to learn new environments. So to be the best coach you can possibly be, You want to make sure that where you get if you get the chance to, obviously, jobs there's not a lot of opportunities out there, and ultimately when you're in a professional environment, it's being able to put your best foot forward and choose the best role that you possibly can. But not a lot of that's in our control, as we know. It's highly competitive. But if you do get the opportunity to move sports, move codes, it's certainly something that I'm looking forward to. So take on that challenge, and I'll report back over the next 6 months to a year to share any learnings that I get from this transition. But going back to this topic, if you've got any questions around this, feel free to email me at jack@pepelicapro.com. I've also do a shout out. We've recently finished our high performance certificate, where we had 20 coaches over a month, where I presented on how to set up your resume to stand out from the competition, which was week 1. Week 2, how to maximize your network to get an understanding of what jobs are out there. Week 3 was around presenting. Typically, there's a 2-stage process for the full-time jobs, and that's what this whole month certificate was around, was landing your first full-time job in professional sport. And my tips on the experience that I've had over the 3 different sort of roles, and the different processes you can go through. And then week 3, which is on presenting. So the 2-stage process, as I mentioned, typically first stage will be more about how you fit within the organization, how your skill set and personality, and who you are as a person, your values fit within the high performance department, particularly the high performance manager. And then presentation 2, which I presented on in the last week, was just more the technical side of things, your strength and conditioning philosophy or high performance philosophy. So if you're interested in that, we have already, there's going to be 10 spots available. We'll next open it up in October. It's $1,200, but I've broken it down into 4 payments of $299 over a quarterly. So if you want to chip away at that and give yourself the best chance in 2026 to land your first full-time job, or perhaps to give yourself a promotion if you're part-time, to get a promotion within your organization, or at the end of the 2025 season, you're going to be putting your best foot forward to give yourself your best chance, then I highly recommend you taking this opportunity. You're not going to only learn from myself, but you'll learn from other coaches as well. The first certificate I did with 20. Going forward, we're going to limit it to 10 to make it a bit more individualized. So it's, as I mentioned, $1,200. You can get it for 4 payments of $299 over the quarter. So if you start now, you can pay that over the year. I'm going to launch the next certificate in October. 1 spot is already taken, so we have 9 spots available. Back we're getting from the participants that just finished our inaugural one was hugely valuable. I was able to make the program even better than when it was originally created. So really looking forward to helping you guys land that first full-time contract. And if it's something you're interested in, just hit me up on email or direct message me, and I'm happy to jump on a phone call and discuss a bit further. But I've broken down today's podcast into 4 key areas. So firstly, we've got speed development, we've got acceleration, we've got agility, and then we've got game speed. So of that speed development, we've got 3 key areas. Your ability to start, to go from a slow speed to explode and go to a really fast rapid pace, obviously really important in field sports. Agility, your lateral speed, both from a offensive point of view, so the forwards and typically the midfielders, and then also from a defensive point of view, your ability to close space and corral, and then game speed, putting it all together, the cognitive point of view, typically anticipation beats acceleration, beats speed. So we want to make sure we've got that chest up, eyes up on the game, and you're working on those coordinative positions with your posture, and that's where a lot of the French Bosch stuff can be really helpful. It's particularly in off-season, pre-season, while you're building the foundations to develop that sound efficiency to help you capitalize on your force capabilities, whether it be your speed, your acceleration, or your ability to cut and step off a dime. So we'll go into a little bit more of the context specific side of things. But firstly, as high performance coaches, we love to do a needs analysis. We need to break down where you are. So that's where this time of year with preseason starting, like I know with the Eels, we're starting on the 4th. So tomorrow on Monday, today I'm recording this live podcast on Sunday, the 3rd of November. And you want to do a bit of an audit on your group. You get an idea of what they did over the off season. But also if you're new to that department, get an idea, get some data, and work out what do we really need to help these players play for the game model. What does the coach want? How does the coach want to play? And what qualities do we have on the squad to help that game model? So that's where it can help to do some testing and work out, do your athletes, is there a max force deficit, i.e. Your strength, how much force you can produce, which is typically our slower qualities, and then your velocity, so how fast you can generate that force. As we know in team sports, AFL, rugby, soccer, it's not who can generate the most force like powerlifting, it's who can generate a high amount of force rapidly, quick, and faster than your opponents. So a good example of that is like a counter movement jump. If you can jump 60 centimeters, but it takes you a whole second of that contraction time compared to someone who can jump 50 centimeters, but half the time in 0.5 milliseconds, you're going to obviously get to that aerial ball a lot quicker on the field. By the time you've left the ground, the person who can jump 60 centimeters is still on the ground. So ultimately, you're going to win that contest, whether it be an aerial ball for Aussie rules football, a header in soccer, or an aerial ball in rugby league. So speed is key. And I like to break down into 4 key areas. You're either you can jump incredibly high, but it's not quick. So therefore, from a plyometric point of view, your ground reaction forces, you need to work on contact times. So you need to be a bit faster. Let's say you do a drop jump and it's around 0.3 milliseconds. We want to get you to a minimum of 0.25 to be truly plyometric. And working on that contact time while still maximizing your height and your length of your jumps and your power, and also your explosive strength. So typically these guys that can jump high, they can generate a lot of force. They use a lot of range of motion. We want to build in some explosive strength in their programs. So that's where we might do short ranges of motion, add in some accommodating resistance, some bands and chains to really encourage that athlete to accelerate through the lifts. And also make sure that their intent with our acceleration and our speed on field is really high. So they're putting a premium on their ability to change speeds rather than just grinding out the same speed. So typically for those guys, pretty obvious. If you're generating high forces, but you're taking too long to do it, you're not quick. We want to move fast. Then we've got our quick and high. So the sort of the gold standard, sort of say, the ideal, the real supreme athletes. For these guys, minimum effective dose typically, from a capacity point of view, they've got the qualities that we need for the game, and they've got some real strengths. So typically, we want to still obviously maximize those strengths and top them up. But as we know, with diminishing returns, by putting in a lot of volume, we're not going to get a lot of reward out of that, and perhaps we're just going to add more fatigue to that system. So for our Ferraris, for our cheaters, if you like, these fast twitch athletes, typically intensity is their friend, but volume can crush them. So we want to respect the volume, be really agile with how they're feeling on a daily basis, and go for that quality over quantity approach, because they've typically got the work capacity under them. They've been years in the system to get to the point where they are, where their strength and their efficiency. If they are young and it's just purely, rather than training, it's more to their genetics. For them, they could be, if they haven't got good mechanics and they haven't got a good understanding of how to use their power and their speed and their strength on the field, they're a bit reckless early on. In teaching them sound deceleration mechanics, landing mechanics, and efficiency with their running will be critical to reduce the risk of injury, because they can generate huge amount of force. It's even more important. They've got really good brakes. They've got really good handling. If we like to think of it like a car, think of the Ferrari. But if you're an 18-year-old on their P's, it could be seriously dangerous, putting a P plater in a Ferrari. So making sure they've got really quality handling, quality brakes, deceleration ability to be able to handle those forces. If it's more your senior athlete, you can put a lot of trust in them. They've got a good understanding of their body, their recovery, and for us, it's that less is more approach to be able to continue on and prolong their career, because they're already in a really good spot from an athletic point of view. So for them, they should be spending the majority of their time and energy on the technical sides of the game, and we almost go for that whole, making sure that they're cognitively really fresh, so they can get lots of return out of their efforts in the football training, so to speak, because we don't need to just keep putting more load and getting gritty and maybe turning their squat from 2.2 times body weight to 2.5, or turning their jump height from 55 centimeters at 0.5 to 60 centimeters at 0.5. All right, so they're pretty easy for us. There's not a lot that we need to do to influence those guys. Then we've got that just by simply them doing the main group program, they're going to be in a good spot. And then we've got the neither, so the opposite, the diesels of the group. So they can't jump high. Typically high for AFL athletes, like well above 40 centimeters. NRL pretty similar. RSI, RSI modified for counter movement jump. Averages seem to be 0.59 for AFL. I was just looking at some Vol data, and NRL was 0.57. So that's the standard. So they're well below that. Let's say they're below 0.5. Obviously, this will just vary depending on your groups. You're comparing them to the group averages of your norms, and more importantly, the position. So if they're a winger, compare them to other wingers in your team. So for these guys, and they're often ultimately football, any code you're looking at, soccer, rugby, AFL, is a skill sport. So although they're physically, this group doesn't have a lot of qualities, they might be a really effective player on game day. So for them, they're using what they have at a really high level. So how can we improve their ceiling? How can we make them just a little bit stronger, a little bit faster? Perhaps they don't have the genes, or they're just really new and they're raw. They've never been in a high performance environment. So if that's the case, by simply putting them into a program, they're going to start to develop some qualities. Typically, we probably want to develop, if they're raw, the strength first, because that's going to influence their speed, their power, everything, their mechanics. And then once that's reached to a certain level, like around that 2 times body weight or 1.3 for upper body strength, then we want to focus on their ability to maintain that strength, and how can we generate those forces faster. So that's where the velocity-based training can come in the gym, and improving their max velocity and their ability to accelerate and change direction on the field. But yeah, start with strength. Then we want to develop slow, short stretching cycle type of work. So how well can they, jump for height? And typically that power training. So like loaded jumps, medicine ball throws. Develop some good mechanics and efficiency with your like rudiment plyos and plyometric ability, and then really start once you've got that good sound experience and work under them, they've got good foundational development. Then we can start looking at adding in some more fancy stimuluses like your contrast training or more complex training, and also challenging their coordination, sort of neuromuscular control with some more advanced plyometrics. Then we've got our quick, but not high. So for these guys, they do have strong rate of force development. The strength they do have, they can generate it quickly, but they're just, for example, if it was a counter movement jump, they're below average. So they're quick. They might be RSI modified 0.7, but they're only getting to 30 centimeters. So They could be quite effective on the field because they're rapid, and they can, if they've got good anticipation, then they can anticipate well because they're going to have good acceleration qualities. And typically these guys will be, rely on frequency from a technique point of view. So we want to work on stride length. We want to maximize every step they can generate more force into the ground, and both from a speed point of view, but also for jumping point of view. So for them, typically getting them stronger. These guys are typically quite weak, or guys or girls. So increasing their max force capability will improve their ability to generate more force, i.e., when their stride length on the field. If they've got that frequency, I think doing some bounds can be really good from a plyometric point of view, to be able to generate more force and high forces. So you could do like a run bleed into it, so jogging or running into some speed bounds, and then also developing them in the gym where their maximum isometric force, so some slower sort of 5-second efforts where they're trying to get as much force as they possibly can, and their dynamic strength, back squat, bench press, deadlift, for example. So let's do 4 different groups. You got your high, not quick. You got your quick, not high. You got your mix that are both great in both. Your pure athletes, and then you got your neither. So bucket them into those 4 key groups. Hopefully that helps you just get a bit of an idea of if you're managing a squat at any level, you can start to see, and you might have access to force decks. Pretty easy these days, force plates, to be able to do this testing. Just do a full jump profile, counter move jump, squat jump, and drop jump, and you can profile them and have a look at it. But if you haven't got access to that, you should just be able to use your coach's eye to be able to get an understanding of what are the athletes' qualities, what are they doing in the gym with their strength, what are they doing when you're seeing them on the field. Are they relying on more frequency to get from A to B, lots of steps, or are they just doing things with ease? Your pure athletes, so you should, and then obviously your diesels that physically haven't got any strengths, that just need a general strength conditioning program to improve. So break it down to those 4 key areas, and then allows you then to get a more specific approach of what's going to help move the needle on that athlete. And you can create your programs like we do on our Propeller Pro online program, where I'll get an understanding of what does someone need. So if you've got that force or velocity deficit, can we get a change with body composition? If we put more muscle mass on you in a functional AFL strength program where you're lifting heavy things, lifting moderate things fast, and you're doing plyometrics and sprinting and accelerations, by putting on more muscle mass and maintaining those strength qualities, you're going to improve your ability to be able to generate more force. By dropping body fat and improving your athleticism with the program, will that improve your ability to generate force faster on the field? And then obviously our training exposures, making sure that we're developing these qualities and doing a bit of an audit on your program. Are we exposing athletes to these qualities? All right, guys, I think that is it. If you have any questions on this topic, like I mentioned, reach out, and I'm looking forward to 2025 for the podcast. We haven't got any interviews in the work at the moment. So if you've got any guests that you recommend, or if you listen to this and you feel like you've got something you'd love to present and share with our community, please email me at jack@propellerpro.com. Over the next few weeks, I will be putting our 2025 guest list together. So if you've got any recommendations, hit me up. And like I mentioned, if you're interested in that high performance certificate that I'll next run in October, if you join now, you're also going to get our Year Academy program for free, which is valued at $400. So you'll get that as part of joining the certificate. So it's just an absolute value add. You get access to all the presentations I've done in the past for the Academy, that are strength and conditioning specific, as well as you'll get access to that certificate. So if you're interested, you can jump in my calendar by clicking the link in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in.